I want to start by asking about the airstrikes against the Syrian government. You put out a statement, as did the entire delegation, once it did happen last week. But I'm curious, did you think that was the right foreign policy move for the Trump administration to make, was to go ahead and make those airstrikes against the Assad government?
Well, first of all, what I think is it is a humanitarian tragedy. As a mother, I look at those babies and those women, children, just murdered in the most horrible way. So I know we have to do something. Our targeted response, I think, was acceptable for what we needed to do. But going forward, President Trump needs to organize the Joint Chiefs of Staff and other people around him, have his best advisors. They need to come to Congress and work on an authorization for a military force, a new one, that lays out the strategy going forward. What are the objectives? What do we need to do? And that's what I think needs to happen going forward.
Do you think these airstrikes, I think it fell under the 2001 authorization of military force, was this an appropriate use of force to go back to something that happened in 2001?
I think it was a targeted use of force. I think he responded to what was clearly a visceral reaction to the most horrible crimes we can imagine. And so I think he reacted in that moment. The 2001 authorization, of course, is old. It's for Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, some of those kinds of terror. We need to have an updated authorization to respond to what's going on, to the challenges we're facing today. So I'm hoping that he's going to listen to us and come to Congress and have those discussions. I sit on Armed Services, so I know that we're asking for that on our Armed Services Committee. There needs to be a clear strategy going forward, because there's too many unintended consequences if you react spontaneously.
Speaking about President Trump, his press secretary, Sean Spicer, got in a little bit of trouble yesterday. He made reference to Holocaust centers, a lot of comparisons to the Holocaust. Nancy Pelosi, calling him to resign. What's your response to that? What's your response to that kind of rhetoric being used by the press secretary?
Well, I think Sean Spicer's shown us over and over again that he doesn't have the temperament for this job. The way he treats the press, the way he treats Congress, the way he seems to have a blatant insensitivity and disregard for facts really concerns me. I'm not his boss, the president is. They can deal with that. But what I want to say is that his insensitive behavior, his inability to understand current global events and the history, American history and world history, is quite astonishing to me.
Do you think he should resign, or the president should remove him from that position?
Well, the president is his boss. So the president needs to say, his press secretary is the face for him with the reporters. So if that's acceptable to President Trump, I can't say what's right or wrong for President Trump, but he needs to deal with his employee the way he sees fit. I'm sure that they're having discussions. I know Mr. Spicer apologized. I appreciate that, but going forward, like I said, he continues to show insensitivity after insensitivity. Whether he retains his job is really up to the president.
I want to ask about health care, just briefly. I know Congressman Conyers has a bill that he's brought forward, I think, every year since 2003. It has to do with creating an expanded Medicaid for all system. The bill has, I think, 60 to 70 Democratic House members who have co-sponsored it. None of the Nevada delegation has. I wanted to ask if you have any interest in signing on to that bill, and what your thoughts are if you'd support a single-payer Medicare for all system.
Well, what my interest in right now is fixing the Affordable Care Act. Overwhelmingly, in the state of Nevada, the Affordable Care Act has worked for us. In my district alone, 30,000 more people have taken the Medicaid expansion. It is working for us in so many ways. Our premiums are good. We're able to take care of our citizens. Our hospitals are happy. Our pharmacies are happy. Our patients are happy. The other thing that I'm worried about with President Trump's repeal and replace is the age tax. There's a tax for people between the ages of 50 and 64. I believe that puts an undue burden on people of that age group who, as of course, when you're young, you're healthier, typically. So the older you get, the more health care you need. So to put an age tax on those people when they're getting older and sicker, I don't think is the right thing. My focus right now is trying to avoid the repeal. We want to mend it, not end it. That's what the calls are to my office. Everybody I speak to, that's what they want. That's what I'm going to work on.
You mentioned the effect the expansion of the Affordable Care Act has had on Nevada, but we still have a large population of people who are uninsured in the state. I believe it's between 15 and 20%. Is the answer to that a move to a single-payer system, or what other sort of fixes need to be made to the ACA to cover people like that?
Well, I think we need to look at the ACA as a whole, and we know what's working really well. Keeping the pre-existing conditions, allowing for preventative care, not charging women different prices just because they're women. So those things are working well. Some of the things that aren't working, we need to look at the Cadillac tax, the medical device tax repeal. Perhaps we need to talk about what's working, not working with drug prices. So I'm a systems analyst by trade, so I see how we break things apart. So I want to strengthen what's already there, the 10 essential benefits that are working for people. Find out why it's not working for some of those folks here in Nevada, because I care about Nevada, number one. And then I want to break that down into their subsequent issues and see how the best way is to tackle it. Like I said, as a systems, you can't take the systems analyst out of the Congresswoman. That's how I approach a problem. Mm-hmm. That's how I want to approach this one. So we'll look at some of the fundamentals there and go from there.
So do you plan to co-sponsor that bill?
The Conyers bill?
Yeah.
Not at this time. I'm working on I'm working on what's going on right now with the repeal. President Trump, they're doing a lot of midnight deals with the Freedom Caucus. It's going to hurt Nevadans. It's going to hurt people across this country, and I don't want to see that happen. So I'm focused on what's immediate, what we can do right now, what we should do.
Mm-hmm. You have a piece of legislation you introduced recently, the Internet Privacy Restoration Act, that got a lot of people upset when that did kind of pass. People learned more about it. It kind of flew through quickly. Can you talk about where that bill is in the process, what your hopes are for it, and some of the issues with the selling of people's internet browsing history, internet history that were inherent in what the House and Senate passed recently?
So my bill restores internet privacy. So what that means is that your internet service provider, not an application that you might use like a Google or a Facebook or shopping at your favorite store, but your internet service provider owns, in some ways, all of your browsing history, where you shop, where you bank, your location, your photos, your financial information. Many cities only have one internet service provider, so you don't have a choice. So by default, they own everything you do. Without this protection, your internet service provider can sell all of your information without your consent to the highest bidder. So would you like your location sold to everyone? Would you like people to know where you browsed, where you shop? If you go on to a particular store, that's your choice. You consent to that, then they can send you advertisement. But this is everything you look at, maybe your medical information. So we don't want that to happen. And what I say is, if you find me a person who wants less privacy, I'd love to talk to them, because most people want more privacy. And I don't want that information sold where it can be used by bad actors. So the bill was just dropped before we went on our district break. I'm sending around a letter for support. I can say that I think the polling is about 90-some% in favor of keeping our internet browsing history private. I think I'm going to find a lot of bipartisan support on that, because, like I said, show me a person who wants less privacy. I'm happy to talk to them. I bet they live in a glass house too, right?
Yeah.
And no locks on the doors either. And so that's what that bill's going to do, and I think hopefully it will go through.
Yeah, I guess just wrapping up, you've been in Congress only for a few months, but your name gets thrown around a lot of times for a lot of the open statewide offices that are going to be coming up in 2018. Have you been approached about running for any other office, or are you just focused on running for re-election?
You know what? I'm focused on the constituents in my district. I went to Washington, and I always say this, I work in Washington, but I live in Southern Nevada. It's where my home is, it's where my friends are, it's where my family is. I'm focused on doing the very best job I can there, and largely for the entire state, because what's good for Nevada is good for all of us. So I've only been there a few months. That's what I'm focused on doing. I'm just keeping my head down and doing my job.
Do you have any interest running statewide?
I just have an interest in being sure that I'm serving my district in the very best way that I can make everybody proud.
Okay. Thank you, Congresswoman. Appreciate it.